The men who love Trump and the men who hate him are both reacting to the exact same thing. They just don't realize it. And no, this is not a political video. I don't care which side you're on, because what I'm talking about has almost nothing to do with policy. It has to do with psychology. For a long time, I looked at Trump's following and asked the wrong question. I kept asking, how can so many men support him? But eventually I realized that question was useless. The more interesting question was this: what does Trump represent to men that almost nothing else does right now? And once I asked that, the whole thing started making more sense. Here's what a lot of men respond to in Trump. Not the politics, the posture. He says what he thinks, without softening it, without checking if the room approves, without apologizing before he even speaks. He gets attacked and doubles down. He gets told he's wrong and acts like he doesn't care. And for men who've spent their entire lives carefully editing themselves, that feels powerful. Because most men do the opposite every day. They soften every opinion. They read every room. They measure every sentence before they say it. At work, at home, online, even with friends. And after enough years of that, watching someone just not do it becomes psychologically intoxicating. We've seen this pattern before. With Kanye, with Tate. Trump is the same psychological pattern, just louder than anyone else. And I think a lot of people misunderstand what's actually happening there. Because the appeal isn't really about becoming Trump. It's about what he symbolizes. A man who acts like he doesn't need permission to exist. And whether you think that's admirable or destructive, you can't deny how strongly men react to it. Because a lot of men feel psychologically cornered right now. Not physically, psychologically. Like every word is being monitored. Every opinion has consequences. Every disagreement risks social punishment. So they become careful. Too careful. And eventually, something strange happens. They stop asking, what do I actually think? And start asking, what am I allowed to say? That shift changes people more than they realize. Because once someone spends years filtering themselves, someone who doesn't filter himself at all starts to look powerful. Even if he's reckless. Even if he's wrong sometimes. Even if the behavior creates chaos. That's the part people miss. Trump's appeal is not built entirely on agreement. A lot of it is emotional, psychological, symbolic. Psychologists who study political behavior have noticed something consistent about attraction to dominant public figures. A lot of the appeal comes from perceived immunity. The feeling that this person cannot be controlled, cannot be silenced, cannot be socially managed. And when people feel powerless in their own lives, that image becomes incredibly compelling. And honestly, I've noticed something similar in men around me. The men who respond most strongly to Trump are not always the men who agree with every opinion he has. A lot of them are just exhausted. Exhausted from self-editing. Exhausted from reading every room. Exhausted from feeling like confidence now requires apology. And watching someone operate with zero visible hesitation scratches something very deep psychologically. Now let me be clear about something. None of this means Trump is automatically right. None of this means the behavior is always healthy. Because freedom without restraint can become destruction very quickly. And confidence without self-awareness becomes arrogance. That matters a lot. But understanding why millions of men emotionally respond to someone like him is more useful than pretending the reaction makes no sense. Because underneath all the politics, the real question is much more personal. Do you actually say what you think? Or have you been editing yourself for so long that you don't even know what you really think anymore. That's the uncomfortable part. Because I think a lot of men realize, privately, that they've spent years shaping themselves into versions that are easier to accept, more agreeable, more careful, more manageable. And after enough time, they stop recognizing themselves inside the performance. That's why this isn't really about Trump. Trump is just the mirror. The actual attraction is toward a version of themselves that stopped apologizing for existing. A version that says what it thinks, takes up space, pushes back, disagrees openly, not because it wants attention, because it's tired of feeling psychologically compressed all the time. And whether you love Trump or hate him, I think that's the thing you're really reacting to. Not just the man, the permission. So what do you do with that? Not politically, personally. The solution is not to become louder for the sake of being loud. It is not to become rude. It is not to copy someone else's posture. The solution is much smaller than that. Start noticing when you edit yourself. Before you speak, ask, is this what I actually think? If the answer is yes, say it plainly. No speech, no over-explaining, no apology before the sentence even lands. If the answer is no, do not force it. Just notice that you are about to perform. That alone changes something. Then pick one low-stakes moment a day to be less edited. Tell a friend what you really think about a movie. Say no without building a courtroom case around it. Disagree calmly instead of disappearing into silence. Not every room, not every conversation, just enough to remind yourself that you still exist underneath the performance. Because that's really what men are hungry for. Not chaos, not politics, not dominance for its own sake. Permission to be direct without feeling like they're committing a crime. And if you can build that without turning into a caricature of someone else, you've already done more than most men do. If that reframed something for you, subscribe, because next week we're looking at the opposite. A man who had every kind of power imaginable and still had no idea what he actually wanted. See you next week.